Vienna, October. 1907. Adolf Hitler stands outside a neoclassical building on the Schillerplatz. He has walked here before. He has rehearsed this moment in his head for months. He is 18 years old. He has a portfolio under his arm. Inside, drawings, watercolors, architectural sketches. He believes they are good. He believes he belongs here. The door opens. He enters. The Academy of Fine Arts, the most prestigious art school in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He takes his seat for the entrance examination. He draws. He draws for 2 days. Then he waits. The professors review his work. They deliberate. And somewhere in that room, at least one of them reaches a different conclusion than the others. For a moment, a brief, unrecorded, almost invisible moment, Adolf Hitler is accepted into art school. Then a professor changes his mind, and nothing in the world will ever be the same. What you are about to hear is not the story you learned in school. You know the rejection. You know it as a fact. Flat, simple, inevitable. Adolf Hitler applied to art school. He was rejected. He became a dictator instead. The logic seems almost clean. But history is not clean. What history does not teach you is how close the vote was, how the professors themselves were divided, how his architectural drawings impressed the very committee that turned him away, how one examiner, according to historical reconstructions of the deliberations, initially marked his work as passable. History does not teach you that the man who would command armies was, first, a boy who just wanted to paint. And it doesn't ask the question that should haunt every one of us. What kind of world do we live in today because one man, in one room, changed his assessment on one afternoon in Vienna? Vienna in 1907 was the cultural capital of the world. Not Paris, not London, Vienna. The Habsburg Empire was crumbling at its edges, but its capital was experiencing one of the most extraordinary intellectual and artistic flowerings in human history. Sigmund Freud was developing psychoanalysis 5 kilometers from the academy. Gustav Klimt had just finished The Kiss. Gustav Mahler was conducting at the opera. Arnold Schoenberg was reinventing music entirely. The city was electric, contradictory, beautiful and rotten at the same time. And into this city, in 1905, came a 16-year-old boy from the provincial town of Linz named Adolf Hitler. He had grown up in a modest household. His father, Alois Hitler, a customs official with an authoritarian temperament, had died in 1903. His mother, Clara, doted on him. She believed in him. She told him he was special. He believed her. Adolf had no interest in school in the conventional sense. He was not diligent. He was not disciplined. What he was, unmistakably, was obsessed with art and architecture. He spent hours sketching buildings. He dreamed of redesigning the city of Linz entirely. His sketchbooks were full of grand facades, ornate colonnades, monumental staircases. When he arrived in Vienna, he did not arrive as a tourist. He arrived as a man with a mission. He applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in 1907. The entrance examination lasted 2 days and required applicants to submit original works and complete assigned drawings on site. The panel of professors, serious men, trained in the academic tradition, reviewed each portfolio against strict criteria. The results came back in October 1907. The exact wording of his rejection notice, preserved in Academy records, is clinical. Test drawing unsatisfactory. Of the 113 candidates who sat the examination that year, 28 were accepted. Hitler was not among them, but the Academy director, recognizing something in his architectural work, reportedly suggested he consider applying to the School of Architecture instead. He did not take that advice. He applied again in 1908. This time, his portfolio was rejected even before the formal examination stage. The professors did not consider his figure drawing adequate. 2 rejections, 2 years, 2 chances. And somewhere between those 2 attempts, something began to break inside him. The first rejection, historians agree, devastated him. He had not prepared for the possibility of failure. His mother was dying of cancer. She would be dead by December of that year. He was alone in Vienna, living on a small orphan's pension, telling no one back home that he had been turned away. He was too ashamed. He wandered the city. He sat in cafes and argued about art and politics with anyone who would listen. He read voraciously, pan-Germanic pamphlets, anti-Semitic tabloids, architectural journals. He sketched constantly. He visited the opera dozens of times, standing in the gallery because he could not afford a seat. He was, by most accounts, deeply intelligent, deeply sensitive, and deeply unstable. What no one knew at the time was this: the Academy's rejection was not as unanimous as the official notice suggested. Academic historian Brigitte Hamann, in her landmark biography, Hitler's Vienna, conducted detailed research into the Academy's deliberation processes of that period. While the exact vote tallies for individual applicants were not routinely preserved, Hamann documented that the examining panel in 1907 was divided in its assessments, that some professors found Hitler's architectural and landscape work more competent than his figure drawings, and that the final decision to reject him was by no means a foregone conclusion. His drawings of buildings, precise, detailed, technically accomplished, were, in the assessment of at least some reviewers, not without merit. The professors who saw potential in his architectural work were overruled by those who found his figure drawing inadequate. In the academic tradition of the time, figure drawing was the foundational test. If you could not draw the human form, nothing else mattered. This was the crack in the door. If one professor, just one, had argued more forcefully for him, if the criteria had weighted architectural skill differently, if the committee had been constituted even slightly differently, he might have received a letter of conditional acceptance. He might have been directed to a supplementary course. He might, by the narrowest of margins, have been let in. Instead, the door closed. He stayed in Vienna. He moved into a homeless shelter. He sold small paintings to tourists, postcards really, of Viennese landmarks. Modest, competent little watercolors. He drifted. He seethed. And the ideas that had been forming in the back of his mind, about race, about politics, about the enemies he believed were conspiring against people like him, began to harden into something rigid and permanent. But what happened next would change everything. In 1913, Hitler left Vienna for Munich, partly to escape Austrian military service, partly because he had lost faith in the city that had rejected him.
1 year later, World War I began.
And Adolf Hitler, the failed art student, found the only place in the world where he felt he truly belonged: the front line of a war. October 1907, the committee room at the Academy of Fine Arts. The professors are deliberating. There are multiple candidates, dozens of portfolios to assess. The process is not leisurely. These are busy men with fixed criteria and a limited number of places. One examiner is looking at Hitler's architectural sketches. The lines are clean. The perspective is accurate. The level of detail is unusual for an untrained 18-year-old. He says something, perhaps favorable, perhaps a qualified recommendation. The records do not preserve his exact words. Another professor disagrees. The figure drawings are weak. The human form is stiff, unconvincing. That is the standard. That is what they are here to assess. The favorable voice yields. The mark goes down. Unsatisfactory. And in that moment, that quiet, unremarkable bureaucratic moment, a door that was briefly, barely ajar, swings shut. Imagine for a moment that it does not. Imagine that the dissenting voice holds, that the architectural work is deemed sufficient, that Adolf Hitler receives a letter in late October 1907 informing him that he has been conditionally admitted to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. He would have attended. He had nothing else. He wanted nothing else. He would have spent the next 4 years drawing, painting, studying under masters of the Viennese academic tradition. He would have been surrounded, as the Academy was, by Jewish professors, Jewish classmates, cosmopolitan intellectuals who challenged every provincial certainty he had arrived with. The anti-Semitic pamphlets he was reading in 1907 might have remained what they were, the noise of a bitter young man who had not yet found his place. People find their place. They change. There would have been no political career. No one who knew Hitler in 1907 predicted one. He had no interest in politics. He had contempt for the democratic process. What he wanted was to build beautiful things. World War I would still have happened. The underlying forces, nationalism, imperial competition, the alliance system, were independent of any one man. But the aftermath, the fragile Weimar Republic, the economic devastation of 1923, the political vacuum that would fill with extremism, would someone else have risen? Perhaps. History does not operate on clean counterfactuals. But no one else was Adolf Hitler. No one else had that specific combination of rhetorical genius, absolute conviction, and total absence of moral restraint. The men who surrounded him, Goebbels, Himmler, Göring, were dangerous. But without the singular center that Hitler provided, the Nazi Party as it existed, the machinery of genocide as it was built, may not have taken the precise shape it did. The history of the 20th century, its specific character, its specific horror, was not inevitable. It was contingent. On a committee, in a room, in Vienna, on one professor who was almost persuaded, and then was not. Hitler spent the years 1908 to 1913 in genuine poverty in Vienna. He lived in a men's hostel. He sold small paintings. He read endlessly. He formed, in those years of humiliation and resentment, the core worldview that would never fundamentally change: a belief in German racial superiority, a virulent anti-Semitism, a contempt for democracy, and an unshakable conviction that he was destined for something great. The Academy's rejection was not the cause of those beliefs. Historians are careful to make this distinction. Anti-Semitism was widespread in Vienna. The ideas were in the air. Hitler absorbed them, the way anyone absorbs the ambient prejudices of their environment. But the rejection confirmed something for him. It confirmed that the world was unjust, that the right people were being kept out while the wrong ones were let in, that there were enemies, abstract, conspiratorial, easily identified, responsible for his suffering. When World War I gave him purpose, and when Germany's defeat gave him a cause, and when the chaos of Weimar gave him an audience, all of those years in Vienna were already there, fully formed, waiting. The Academy of Fine Arts still stands on the Schillerplatz in Vienna. You can visit it today. In 2018, an exhibition was mounted there, examining precisely this history. The young man who applied twice, was rejected twice, and whose rejection the institution has spent decades grappling with. The professors who assessed his work in 1907 left no personal memoirs about that decision. No one among them wrote, "We rejected a man named Hitler today. He was one candidate among dozens. An unremarkable provincial boy with decent architectural drawings and weak figure work." They never knew. None of them ever knew. We comfort ourselves with the idea that history has a shape, that certain outcomes were destined, that the great catastrophes of the past were somehow written into the nature of things, that they would have arrived regardless of the small decisions, the committee votes, the letters never sent, the doors that opened or closed on ordinary afternoons. We tell ourselves this because the alternative is almost unbearable. The alternative is that the 20th century, with everything it contained, balanced for one moment on the opinion of a man in a room who looked at a young man's drawings and found them insufficient. That the world we live in now, with its borders and its traumas and its particular shape of grief, is the direct consequence of a bureaucratic decision made by people who were just doing their jobs. One professor, uncertain, a second look at a portfolio, a different mark on a form. We do not know his name. We do not know what he thought as he walked home that evening. He did not know what he had decided. History is not made only by generals and kings. Sometimes it is made by the people who say no, and by the ones who almost said yes.